Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday for January 26th. This is Ruvan with Mercer Caps. It's a brand new year, brand new semester, so there's a lot of new changes, new things on the horizon, a lot of old things that are still there, and maybe most importantly, lots of times where we're trying to figure out what needs to be done now, what needs to happen next, and what can wait a while. And that's why I want to talk a little bit today about procrastination. And really, this is a continuing conversation from the previous Wellness Wednesday I did on the topic. So, uh, you know, procrastination, I think, is something that we all deal with a little bit, and oftentimes have experiences with outside of school, work. We may procrastinate small things, like unloading a dishwasher, a big thing like looking for a new credit card. So procrastination itself, is probably around us a lot, maybe a lot more than we realize. But it's unfortunate that I think a lot of times we get caught in patterns of procrastination, and that's why we're going to talk today again about chronic procrastination, because that's a lot different from what we might think of when somebody says, "Oh, I just procrastinate all the time." Everybody does that, and people do put off small things. Nobody wants to, for example, fold the laundry, so they may say, "I'm going to fold the laundry later today." But about 20 to 25% of people have what we call chronic procrastination, and it's unfortunate because a lot of that does lead to pretty serious missteps for people. So, for example, have you ever had a time when you meant to buy a ticket for a concert or an event or a show and kept putting it off? Or you forget to pay a bill because you kept saying, "I need to check something before I pay this bill completely," and never get around to doing that. Or they don't, or you might have a gift certificate or a coupon somebody gave you, and keep saying, "Oh, I got to use this, but I got to make sure I check everything else first before I get to checking it or to using this gift certificate." So it's unfortunate that big things like that can happen because we procrastinate, and especially because of chronic procrastination. So when we have a lot of things on our plate, it's easy to procrastinate. But there's also an unfortunate tendency to just procrastinate because we fear a lot of the small things that can happen that may be involved with trying to do something bigger, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the causes of procrastination, how it develops, and what people do to help resolve and be uh, be a bit more mindful, so it doesn't feel as out of control as it might have been. Right? Sometimes procrastination comes from lacking confidence, like if it's something you've tried just once or twice before, and you keep putting it off because you're like, I don't think I'm going to do that well with it. Um, Sometimes it goes to feeling like, wow, I got this, I can do this, and so I don't really need to do it right now. I can put it off for later. Right? Um, and it's interesting because that is kind of the opposite of having not having confidence, but both of those lead to procrastination. Right? A lot of times when we procrastinate, we tell ourselves half truths or little lies too, right? I'll feel more like doing this tomorrow, or I work better under pressure. Uh, but we know that that doesn't actually happen. That we tend to instead just kind of feel the same way that we did, and under pressure we just feel more overwhelmed and frustrated or angry with ourselves. But we get some progress, but not because we're working better under pressure. Yeah? Well, a lot of times when we procrastinate, we look for distractions. How many times have we said, "Hold on, let me check my text messages first, or let me check TikTok or Instagram, and then get back." Look for small things that we can do to distract ourselves that makes it easy to put off whatever it is that we're procrastinating. So if we go back to that question, do I struggle with chronic procrastination? One way to look for answers to answer that question is some of these things, like, do I have a hard time meeting deadlines? Do I put things off in the middle of, do I put things off all across life? Like if you tend to put stuff off just with school or with some things for work, you know, then there may be just some procrastination or motivation in that area. But let's say you also put off cooking a dish, or buying groceries, or doing laundry, or even calling people back, or buying birthday presents. When things like that happen across all these different areas of life, that is unfortunately a pretty big area and a pretty big effect, and that can be chronic procrastination. Do you find yourself getting distracted easily? And that could be with anything too, like, oh, I'm starting to boil these spaghetti noodles, but wait, I see that the dishwasher finished running and I need to unload them first. Uh, does it affect relationships with your people that you're close to? Yeah, you kept saying you were going to do this and you haven't. Or even small things like, oh, you're always late, or you always forget to buy the tickets or the food. Those are all unfortunate ways in which procrastination has become chronic and affect lots of different domains of our lives. Another area in which chronic procrastination can manifest is how you feel about yourself. Like if you feel like, oh, I just never get anything done, I'm not very good at things because I get distracted easily, it often leads to us feeling really unmotivated and maybe feeling bad opinions about ourselves. Uh, and that leads to lots of stress. If you can't seem to put stopping, if you can't stop to, you know, if it's always feel like I'm stopping to have to do one thing that I forgot about the next day or yesterday, it leads to, again, it's just, wow, I'm never getting anything done. Uh, Again, procrastination can be situational for some people, but it's not always the case, and especially if it happens over and over. And really, when you know yourself best, if it's been happening for a while, that's unfortunately probably a sign of chronic procrastination. To think about just one semester, we found from research that college students, will find that their health gets affected by chronic procrastination because they put off things that could have helped, like getting exercise, regular meals, but also the stress they feel about I didn't get this done, and often leads to them not having enough, not having time to socialize, get good contact with people, not sleep. Right? Sometimes it leads to more gastrointestinal problems, can lead to more alcoholism, use in general. Uh, and it has a lot of cost on us that's hidden beyond that immediate stress of not getting something done, right? Uh, and and then when people around us see us procrastinating and do the same pattern over and over, it leads to us feeling, or leads to oftentimes them feeling slightly resentful or upset or even angry about kind of why don't you change this thing you do over and over and over, right? If you think about even in a classroom, it tends to destroy the teamwork element, because if one person keeps putting off parts that are their responsibility, it starts to feel like this person's just lazy or incompetent or not really even kind of caring about people other than themselves, and that leads to those sensations of uh, being leads to kind of easy situations to be resentful, when we think about procrastination, there's three broad ways in which we might see it come up, right? The first is called arousal, and that may seem kind of odd, but what that means is that we're going to have people who feel like they enjoy the thrill or the excitement of we do things at the last minute. They'll say that's true, and it is. But a lot of times it happens over and over and again. It leads to this unfortunate situation of just feeling really burnt out and really frustrated that I waited till the last minute, even though part of you looks forward to it, for the next go around. A third type is avoiders. I guess we could say avoidant people, right? Or avoiders, because a lot of times people will, avoid things out of a fear of failure, and sometimes it's just that, this is not a task that has a pleasant memory associated with it. And then decisional procrastinators, that's the third category, which are people who feel like they need to always evaluate every option and before making a decision, and weigh weigh possible pros and cons, after effects, how this might affect whatever. And that's understandable to an extent, but if you're, for example, standing in the grocery store and you're trying to decide between something that costs 35 cents and 40 cents, well, the 5 cents may not be that big of a issue that needs that much deliberation. Okay? So those are the three broad types of procrastinators. Yeah? People who seek the arousal, the kind of thrill of waiting till the last minute. People who avoid it and feel like I just need to avoid whatever this decision or this task is. And the indecision procrastinators who feel like any choice is going to take a while to make, and so it's important to just sit there and kind of sit with trying to make that decision over and over. Right? So let's talk a little bit about some of those causes. You heard some of them come up in describing the three types of procrastination. Right? So, like, again, when you look at procrastination coming from emotional regulation or emotional kind of flares, right? It might be something like you put off calling the dentist because you know that ahead of time, that when you have the dental appointment, it's going to lead to a lot of pain. So it's just like, I'm just not up to making that call right now. Or you don't want to call your sister after an argument because you know that you're going to have to admit that you were wrong and apologize, right? So it's again that strong emotion, unpleasant emotion, that comes with having to make whatever that action or that task is, right? And feeling like it's going to be an awful or difficult emotion or experience to go through. And a lot of times it can be. But sometimes it does build up to be more than what we think about it in our mind. Like, if you feel like returning this sweater to the store, it's going to be a big thing because I'm going to have to show my receipt. They're going to argue with me, and they're going to keep asking why I want to return it. It could lead to feelings of embarrassment, feeling powerless, feeling isolated, all before you actually go to the store. And then when you go to the store, it turns out that it's a pretty quick process, right? Sometimes procrastination comes from and is reinforced by mental health symptoms and diagnoses, right? Now, a lot of times, if you're feeling anxious about something, and if you have a lot of anxiety overall, it's going to lead to you feeling, again, more paralyzed in trying to do something or make a decision, because the anxiety spike comes up and says, hold on, are you sure that's the right thing to do? Is that the best way to do this, right? So You may find yourself worrying about how something's going to work out, as well as whether it's the best way to do it. On the other hand, depression can also lead to procrastination because it wears away at our energy and our self-worth. We just feel like it takes so much to put away the clothes and then clean up the things on the floor. I just don't have it in me, or I'm not going to be able to put them away well because I don't have enough hangers, or the clothes are going to be rumpled when I put them away. So what's the point? Basically, depression makes us procrastinate because we feel like whatever we do is not going to be good enough anyways, so why bother? And then lastly, in terms of causes, procrastination often leads to more procrastination and makes us feel trapped, but in an addictive way. Now that sounds a little odd, so let me describe that a bit more in detail. A lot of times when we procrastinate, like let's say we have a paper due, say we'll put it off and say, okay, instead of working on it tonight, I'm going to work on it tomorrow. We get a little bit of relief. We feel a little bit more control. We still know it's going to be due in, say, 4 days. We have now more of it to do tomorrow. But for right now, we feel a bit more relaxed, a little bit more comfortable because I don't have to work on it now. But we created this sticky situation because we're caring more about that peace of mind that comes from thinking about it being due, working on it tomorrow rather than today. And it's a fleeting sensation, but it's addictive in that way because I just felt so good not having to worry about it. And then come tomorrow, let's say it's after lunch, and let's say we're going to work on it now. Well, I enjoyed that feeling of not being stressed, of not having to worry about it. So it's easy to say, I want a little bit more of that sensation. And so it's addictive in saying, I'm just going to procrastinate a bit more. And say, well, no, I still have 2 more days. I'm just not going to work on it now. Now, another way to think about that is, to ask yourself, do I ever actually feel calm? Probably not. We have moments where we're feeling rested or a little bit of, less anxious because we put something off. But we don't ever feel truly calm. That sense of anxiety keeps kind of rippling through us. And that's the rub. That it creates a cycle that's difficult to break because we keep looking forward to that little bit of relaxed sensation of having put something off. So that's a lot of things that can come together to create chronic procrastination. And it's unfortunate that, again, it's become normalized, it's all around us. A lot of times it becomes almost hopeless to change. But let's talk a little bit about things that might be able to help not just change procrastination, but help us understand a little bit more about where it comes from. So the first thing to do, and this is true of almost anything, is to make sure that you be honest with yourself and forgive yourself. And that may sound kind of cliche or kind of like silly, but no, it's important to forgive yourself for things that you have not done well. In this case, not kept up on time, or not kept stringent with deadlines you haven't missed, right? So, for example, if you're talking to a friend and they talked about having missed a deadline, or even had quite a few deadlines that they missed, you'd probably say something like, waiting to do the project didn't work out too well, but it's okay to make mistakes, and and you still passed that class, or you still got that internship paper done. So basically, when you think about, what have you done? Yes, may have made mistakes, but it's important to forgive yourself for things that you put off or didn't get done on time, right? And like I said, when you think about what a friend might say, it's a really good idea to keep that perspective off of. If I was talking to a friend who was worried about procrastinating, how would I how would I frame what they're saying to themselves, in a more positive light, right? Think about the things that you haven't let up with, the things that you have got done time, and say, all right, so what can I learn from this to help me be more motivated to, to keep up with this? Another part of forgive yourself is to recognize the progress. So let's say you had 10 things you needed to do over a week. If you got 8 things done on time, that's awesome. Put up a piece of paper with the number 8, saying 8 things done on time. Out of all this, we're aiming to make progress in terms of, decreasing procrastination. We're not looking for things to be completely perfect. So we also want to challenge our beliefs about ourselves, and especially those false beliefs, right? And there's a few different ways this can manifest, because there's different types of false beliefs we can have about ourselves. Another word for that is cognitive distortions. Sometimes overgeneralization is a frequent one, where we say, I did really poorly on that last paper. I'm not going to do any better on this one, so why study, right? Or why write it, or even why try to start it? Well, that's a pretty big and pretty unfair way to look at how one thing, right? So saying oh, I you know I wasn't my best. I could have done better. I could have gotten started earlier. You know, I could have talked to this person who had some knowledge about this paper. But there's lots of reasons to say that okay, I didn't do well that paper. There's things I can do differently here, and I'm not sure if that's going to be perfect, but at least I'll feel a little bit better about starting this now. Sometimes we discount the positive. Again, thinking about all the times we put something off or missed a deadline, and forgetting that, this time that we did, and kind of what happened there. So, for example, let's say paying a bill. All the times that you paid a bill, which is awesome, paid on time, meant that you didn't have a late fee or didn't have any interest accrued or whatever. It's important to look at, okay, what did I get out of doing things on time? And what did I get on the time that I did keep myself from procrastinating? Also look at, do I have a tendency to catastrophize? Meaning, do I make the fact that I didn't get to class till 10 minutes after class began a much bigger deal than it is? Maybe the professor said something, or maybe the TA said something, but still you were there for the rest of class and followed through on what the material was, and you didn't feel too lost because you still still knew kind of what was going on and were able to talk talk amongst class and your classmates about what had happened. And sometimes that combines with the other cognitive distortions or the other false beliefs we have, in that we tend to kind of filter out things that were good. Well, how did I reckon, how did I on time, right? So next, when we think about how else we can decrease procrastination and work on it, and this may sound counterintuitive, but it's important to take things slow, right? Say, all right, I'm not going to try and do everything for this paper today.